Hey Taylor, what are you making today?
So as you can see, I've made a pig. And if it looks like a pig, and it sounds like a pig, then it must be a pig.
It's sad to see what an excess of caffeine can do to a young and developing mind. Take this as a warning, children. You too could look this stupid. Downright foolish if you don't curb your addictions post-haste. Alas, this young man may never be truly sane again. But really, who the hell cares? Not me, and certainly not you. Regardless, it's now time for something completely different.
Hey. I have no words for what my intro was, but I hope you enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. Alright, what are we doing today? Today we're doing something totally different per that intro. That was intentional. Today, as you saw in the preview, we are going to be doing my sculpture. So I do sculpt, fun fact. And I've done it a few times. Go figure, it takes a long time. All the things I care about take a long time. That means that the projects I make are seldom finished and seldom in number. That's how you say that. Yeah, so I finished this a while back, and I actually made all the effort to make a video. I compiled a bunch of photos, references. I shot a lot of videos, took a lot of pictures throughout the entire process, filmed an intro, which I'll briefly show in just a second here, and then never did it. This video is not only to show that, because I'm proud of it and I do want to make that video, but this video is to say that Quoth is here. That this video is to say Quoth is here. Yep. Quoth is here. So, this video is to say, don't get stuck on perfectionism. Finish your damn project, whatever it is, because it's worth it. You're worth it. You deserve to finish that project. You deserve to share it with the world. You are good enough. It's okay. I'm saying that to myself as much as to you, but it's funny because this video would have never turned out this way when I would have made it before. I would have got so hung up in the details of editing that I hated that I would have been probably dry and boring and not me, let's say that much. So this video is me. I hope you enjoy the process. There probably won't be as many time lapses, but there will be pictures we will be talking about as we go through it. And I hope you enjoy it. So yeah, until then, see you next time. That's not my outro. Until next time, see you then.
Hello everybody. In this episode, nope, not in this episode. Hello everybody. In this video we're going to be sculpting Shendu from Jackie Chan Adventures. No. Hello everybody. I'm Taylor. Today we're going to be sculpting Shendu from Jackie Chan Adventures. We're not sculpting that version, but we are sculpting the wall ornament version. We're not sculpting that version, but we are sculpting the wall ornament version. Again, this video is a lot of behind the scenes kind of teaser shots. It's not going to be a full time-lapse sculpting. I know a lot of people on the platform do that. That's not something I don't want to do, and in future videos I'll definitely show some of that, but I want to give a little more behind the scenes. I want to give the inspiration for the pieces that I'm making. I really enjoy that. When it's something that you like and you can kind of speak to the property a little bit. I also want to give some of the challenges or cool things about the project as I'm going along, so I can kind of show that and demonstrate that as well.
Yeah, so that's me. It's almost kind of hard to watch it, to be completely honest, to look back at myself at that time. So this was like 2.5 years ago. The timeline of when the sculpture began versus when I did that, because I did that, I think, roughly right when I was done with the sculpture, before I did casting, before I did painting, so kind of like right in the middle of the process. Yeah, it's difficult to watch. I don't know if it's just me because I'm watching myself and I can relate to the emotions that I went through at that time and how I was feeling, but I hope it translates. But I was definitely a lot more critical on myself, and I was not happy, for lack of a better word. Things have changed a lot as of recent, but oh, young Taylor. Young Taylor. Anyway, should we talk about this video now? I feel like we've had like an 8-minute intro, and I apologize, but you know, it's my channel, and you will watch it. So I guess first, Shendu. You saw in the intro, it's based on a dragon character from Jackie Chan Adventures. So yeah, it's kind of a bust that sits on the wall, and we did sculpting. It wasn't the first time I sculpted, but for all intents and purposes, it was the first time I sculpted. It's made with Chavant clay, which is a wax-based clay, which melts. Freaking great. If you've never used it, it's really fun to use. So what you really want to do is you want to melt the clay. You kind of I put mine in a crock pot, and you heat it up so like it turns into like a soft liquid. I scooped it out. I put it in like a tray or on a table to let it cool slightly. It's malleable, but the way you push it and you move it through your fingers, it's so satisfying. It is the best to play with. One of the reasons I wanted to use it. Sculpture Geek on YouTube. Amazing. Great sculpture videos. Check him out. He was a huge inspiration. But this is around the time where I had no idea what I was going to do for a channel. I was back and forth about, should I do drawing? Should I do other things that we haven't talked about? So I was like, oh, I'll make a sculpting channel. How long the sculptures took, I knew that it wasn't for me, even though I like it and I'll probably make more. I didn't want that to be the sole focus of my channel. So yeah, first photo here. How we started this is we used a python. That's a metal python underneath that coiled looking snake. And yeah, I just started piling up clay. As I piled it up, I started to take tools in and I formed it. Again, when it's soft, when it's malleable still, you can shape it. Once it gets harder, you can scrape it and sculpt it and use a variety of tools to whittle it down, basically. There's large protrusions, or cavities, I suppose I should say, underneath where you don't want to use all your clay, because it takes quite a bit of clay. It might look deceiving. It takes quite a bit of clay to get that kind of density. So if there's hollows underneath, you can stuff it with like tinfoil or paper or something just to fill that space, or using less clay only on top. It's more surface based. Yeah, so we just started with finding the shape language of the snake. We'll go into the next one, and I'll kind of say that as I go along, because it's going to make it easier for me to edit these photos later. But the second one, you can just see from the top down. And yeah, it's essentially a snake. Real base form language here, nothing too crazy. I wanted to keep I guess that here's an interesting point. How did I differentiate the cartoon, which I'll have an image on screen, and you already saw it, but throw it in again if you don't know the character and the property. How do you differentiate the cartoon version, which obviously is a cartoon, versus the three-dimensional, again, in the cartoon you can see from multiple angles, but for all intents and purposes, I'm going to say that phrase again, because I'm unoriginal. It's 2D. So how do you differentiate the 3D, the 2D? How do you bring that variance to life, which is really the most fun part about sculpting. There's a lot of creative freedom in that process. And there's a big balance in how you structure and play with the variances between how they look in 2D versus how they really need to be formed in 3D. And it's funny because, well, if you have ever looked at cartoons, the on-model versions very wildly shot to shot. Like if you look at a cartoon and you look at a character between scenes, they can look vastly different. That can be mind-numbing if you're trying to hold something to a certain standard, but it can be freeing if you want to be able to have your own flavor, right? So I knew what I wanted is I wanted to keep a lot of the angular features. I wanted to keep the general aesthetic, the general design, but I wanted to ensure, because the original cartoon is much more simplistic when it comes to scales and things like that. So I knew that I would do a lot of scales to help bring that forward. And obviously I would give more variety to the color to give it more depth, make it feel more real. I'll go to the next one. So here you can see I've gone a little further in refining the head. The head is I started as at one piece. I chopped it after this point because it made it a lot easier to get the whole sculpting around. You can imagine if you have a bulk of clay and you have a flat surface, you can't really get to the underneath backside. So I chopped it off so I could really wrap around. You can see here there's horns, and I'll go to the next one. But before I do, you can see in the top right corner there's actually a toothpick sticking out. And that's great to provide supports for whatever you're doing. If you have extrusions or pieces that stick out from the body, stick out from the head, you need to have supports in there because that clay itself is going to be very weak or fragile. If you bumped it or if it was too wet depending on the clay, or too warm and malleable, it could fall off or it could break or it could just, not support itself. If we're on to the next one, you can hear here it's fully separated the head. We've gone in, we're shaping more, trying to give more detail, putting in eye sockets. We've added the lower jaw fully, trying to sculpt that out. Third image, or I'm not going to count these, but we'll just say next one. We've come a lot closer to the overall shape of the face. And if you paid attention, like I had the little wing flare by the nose. I took it off because it wasn't further enough along to really have that. I need to get to the face to a state that was more defined before I had that in, because it really kind of got in the way. It's like trying to sculpt around a mustache. But the teeth and the tongue, that was a fucking bitch and a half. That is such a small cavity, and to get your little tool, I'll show you a tool. Tray O'Tools. We've got this guy, and this guy, and this guy, and this guy, and rubber silicone scrapers, and wooden guys, and brushes, and scoops, and I forgot what this is called. I'm going to call it a scraper. Everything you would need. But there are a lot of tools, and you don't really need that many, but I kind of went overboard because I hadn't really done it before, and I wanted the variety to get into those nooks and crannies, right? So you can see like a hoop piece versus a more angular piece. That'll help you get into corners, or that'll help make it more rounder. And all you're doing is you're scraping across, right? You're scraping over that surface, you're rounding it out, and that's what does it. You can kind of go in two methods versus more additive style or more subtractive style. You obviously add to start, but I feel like I get the most detail when I am subtracting. I feel like I can bring in my drawing skills, right? So I can easily take away or refine more direct lines versus when I'm adding, but you obviously want to add on occasion for like those cheeks and things like that, the eyebrows. You can see in the next one where we are starting to add the lines around the head, he's got very direct forehead lines. Again, this process was all really discovery based. I didn't really know what I was doing. Like, I didn't really watch tutorials. I watched people who sculpted, and I knew that I wanted to do it, so I kind of looked and saw what their tools looked like, looked and saw maybe what kind of clay they used. But other than that, I just kind of did it myself. I made it up, which is what you have to do. You got to get your hands dirty, right? You're never going to know unless you try. Coffee sip. Spoiler, it's I've been working on this video all day. It's 8 o'clock. Do I need coffee at 8 p.m.? No, I don't. But I like it and I want it, so I'm drinking it. Next video. Here we have some more symmetry, right? So the head is looking much more along. There's good symmetry between both sides, and let me tell you what, those 3 wingtips on either side, that fucking sucked. That was really hard to get those to try to look symmetrical, because you're not only dealing with horizontal symmetry, you're dealing with the depth, right? You're dealing with the z-axis, where you go forward and backwards. So when you turn it to the side, you're dealing with that symmetry on both sides too. It's a lot to play with. It's a lot more to consider than if you're just doing a flat image, let's say that much. It's a lot of fun. Yep, same head again. If we go to the next one, kind of a down shot, you can see the teeth a little more, the tongue. Again, that was a lot of, while it was annoying to put in there, it was even more of a pain in the ass to paint it. Yeah, that kind of takes care of the head though. Now we show the body in more of a completed state. So, what we did, same style of process. We took that base form and we just kept refining it. So you can see there's a scale pattern. I basically figured out a size scale I did. And then I went and drew swoops and swoops, and then I layered them swoops and swoops. And then you did a slightly different variation for the body. I think the most important thing to keep in mind for myself when I was doing this is the depth of the entire piece. It helps because I used that pie tin as a base, so it kind of already gave me a little bit of a dome. So it helped naturally want to pull in that depth. But I wanted my sculpture to have, what is the word I'm looking for? I didn't want it to be a soft, I didn't want it to be a soft sculpt. So a soft sculpt is generally, I'm just going to say it's not good. It's not distinct. It makes it appear like you don't know what you're doing. There's not much surface detail. Everything can look muddy, right? There's not as much definition to the overall piece. So I knew I wanted to feel distinct because it's going to make it look better. So a lot of the process was figuring out, you can see where those coils of the body overlap, figuring out the proper depth between each coil and ensuring that each body roll had a good arc to it to show that depth. And again, there was adding, there was subtracting. But yeah, if you go through, we can kind of show it from the side angles. Around the side, you can see the whole thing coils up to a point where his head would then attach. In the next image, you can see the head sitting on there. It is not fully attached. I put it on to get some sculpture details, but when it comes down to casting, which we can talk about later, I sliced it off again entirely. So I think it's kind of crudely stuck on with, probably more toothpicks or something at this point. But yeah, you can see most of the piece here is done. This took quite a while. It wasn't a quick process. And again, I don't have a good timeline, but probably a month. I can't remember how much time I can't remember how many sessions I had working on it or how much time I spent each day. I kind of went back and forth over time, and I was pretty on top of it because I was excited. It was the first one I'd really done. The next one, I like this because look, in the very background, there's reference images. Hey, I used reference images, go me. I looked up a lot of images of him online, whether in his full dragon form or just the bust. The good thing about the full dragon form in the show, he eventually changes, is there were more angles for him from the side, so I can get more depth to the face, but the face has changed so much. But yeah, he's got a little base below him. You can see there's carvings in it. If you look closely, you can see there's little indentations along his body. There's these things called talismans in the show, and they're inserts for where those get plugged into. So we're just insinuating here. From the side, you can see him. From the other side, you can see him. Yeah, you can see there's like a little clay ball under his chin. That's kind of just holding the head in place, I believe. So yeah, it wasn't fully stuck on. It was more or less resting there. Yeah, in the next image, you can really see it. But that kind of helps you see some of the sides, right? So again, you're scraping, and you're trying to smooth it out at the same time. But you also want to add surface texture. So I have things like this, right? It's pokey, a little wire brush. You can scrape the surface with that. It gives good texture. You can also poke it around. Add pores, essentially. Like all of those things are things you think about when you're sculpting if you want to make sure it has good detail. Go to the next one. Yeah, this one's great because it's actually close up, so you can see some of those pores along his nose, even a few on his tongue and stuff. And you know, those change, like I said, like once the clay fully dries. If you really want to work it again, or if you want to try to make it look softer and blend some of those lines, what we'll do is, I don't have it in here. But what you'll do is you can take a lighter or a torch or a flame of any kind. But what I had a little like propane lighter, so I would click it on, shoot fire at it, which is a lot of fun. But it softens the clay and makes it malleable again, so that you can move it around again, which is why this type of clay is really fun to use. Yeah, this next image kind of straight down, you can see more of those that porous texture. I was really happy with how it came out. Now, the next image shows what it looks like after it was cast. I'll make this brief again. This isn't teaching. I just want to talk about the entire process because I think it's interesting. You know, I knew I wanted to retain this piece, right? I used a clay that would keep, but if it ever got warm or anything, like you don't really keep a sculpture indefinitely this style of clay. You don't bake it, right? It just melts. Like I said, it's like a wax based. So if you wanted to keep it, what you would do is you would cast it. So you would make a box of some kind, you would pour silicone, you'd make a rubber silicone mold. If I would have known I was going to be making this video, I would have kept my molds. Literally threw them away like 5 days ago. I had them all this time still. But I've been clean, hey. You pour a mold, then you have to cut the mold out so you can remove the clay from the mold. Once you're done with the clay, you say, bye. You don't need the clay anymore, it's gone. You want to make sure your mold is totally clean. The art of mold making is fucking crazy. You have to be really precise. You want to try to get as least bubbles as possible. So the problem that happens is if you get bubbles from the pour of the silicone, you get air pockets trapped underneath. What happens is you get holes within your sculpture, right? So you would pour a plastic resin inside the silicone rubber, and then once it's fully cured, you get this white piece here. You get this image. Now you can see I have green epoxy or putty on top of it, and that green is there to basically rebuild and re-support the areas that had loss. So I had many locations that had holes and pockets that really detracted from the overall piece. I was pretty damn pissed off when I did this. The only thing I could have done if I wouldn't have done this is I would have had to ensure that the original clay sculpture was in good condition and probably re-pour a silicone mold, which is an entire process. But guess what? Go figure, when you take the clay out of the silicone mold, it can be really tight. So you cut it out, but you don't want to cut too much so it can still retain the plastic resin. When you remove it, it can be weird inshoots and stuff, right? So you have to be a little forceful to get it out. So guess what? It kind of broke in places, and I wasn't going to fix it all and spend another 4 days on it to re-pour, and it wasn't worth it. So yeah, the next image, you can see the backside. Shows some more of that damage where I re-sculpted, and this was just the best solution for me. You know, it was all a learning process, and it was really fun. The silicone part was the stressful part. It has cure times, so you have to mix 2 parts together. You have to pour it. You need to pour it outside. Of course, when I would pour, it'd be like a windy ass day, so I'm trying to pour silicone, and you want to pour it from high location versus low. You pour it from a higher location, you get less bubbles in the stream. So I'm pouring it high, and the wind's blowing. It's like it's flying off, and it fucking sucks. But it's all things you learn, right? It's all things you learn. Next image, small repairs on the side. Last image here of the touches are just the general body. Same type of scenario. The body was much more unaffected by the pour. The backside had some issue, and when we're all done, I can show you that, because I don't have a good picture of it here. But yeah, once that's all filled in, really the next thing that you would be focusing on is you'd be focused on painting. So I got an airbrush, and I had paint brushes, and I got a bunch of paint, and we just painted it up. So the next image, you see it. I don't really have progress shots. I wish I did. I know I had 1 or 2 at some time, but I guess I deleted them. I don't know where they're at. But these are final photos. So basically what you do is you take your color, you take your base color, like you're painting on a digital tablet. So I took green, I took yellow. You'll then generally have a wash. That gets into all the deep colors, so it's a really thin, kind of a black or a brown or whatever kind of darkness you're looking for. You roughly paint that on. You can kind of dab it off, but that fills in the deep crevices. And when you're looking for highlights, you do what's called a dry brush. And the dry brush is the opposite. So you take very light, thin paint. You want to thin it out very fully on your brush, and then you just lightly coat it, quick swatches, quick brushes, I don't know, quick, across the top. That gives you color contrast. This piece also has some metallic finishes, because I thought that would play well with it being the sculpture and the dragon having a shine. Excuse me, my throat is dry. And yes, the coffee helps the throat. Next piece shows it from the back. You can see how it's kind of catching the light, so it's kind of showing some of that. The side, this one looks really cool. You can see the highlights on the curves, the gold parts of the body there. The eye is red. We'll talk about that in a second when we have a close-up shot on the top. But yeah, I'm really happy with how it came out. You know, I'd spray painted, and this whole thing, I had never done any of this before. I had never airbrushed. I had never hand painted. I had never sculpted. The only thing I had sculpted is like really tiny things with like air dry clay that would break after so long. And I did it when I was 16. Okay. So this is the first time I freaking sculpted. And, I mean, really, and, pretty ecstatic, with the result. So, next one is a downward shot. Again, just kind of showing the piece. I think this one is good because you can see it with all the highlights and lowlights to help show some of the angulature I tried to keep in those folds, right? So I wanted to really keep that in line with the cartoon. I wanted to try to keep some of that form language of how his body really curled up. So there's roundness to it, but there are definitive angles, especially on that second curve. You can really see it, how it pokes into the side. And I thought that really helped to bring in that cartoon drawn aesthetic, those sharper lines. Overall, I wish the head was maybe more tilted up, just a hair, because he looks a little bit down. He looks good to look at if he's like elevated above your eye height just slightly, but otherwise he looks like he's peering down a little bit. Too much for my liking, but what are you gonna do? This last image is cool. You can see the eyes more close up. So my original plan, you can see those holes really well. What I originally wanted to do was drill out the eyes, drill out the holes, run LEDs through the back, and have it light up. The head is fully detached. I cast it separately. and it was essentially just glued on afterwards and then all painted together. So there's a little bit of a, you know, an edge if you look at it, but there's so many frills that it kind of covers it up. But I drilled a hole through it to do it, and well, I kind of didn't feel like fucking with it anymore. It was a whole process, right? But I tried the airbrush. I was like, well, I know you can get good effects with an airbrush for a glow, and I'll try it. And does it have the exact same effect? No, but I think it's still pretty cool, so I don't think I would ever go back to it at this point. Maybe that's a project for the future on a different piece. But yeah, the airbrush, I did like a, I did a white base. So I made sure the undercoating was white, so that way the color you apply on top of it would be as bright as possible. Again, if anybody's like a real painter, like between you and me, I'm not a real painter, okay? So like, I don't know all the tricks and like secrets and stuff. I'm going off my memory and what I did, and I'm pretty sure I'm right. But if I'm wrong, tell me, because that's fine. I'm wrong a lot. White undercoat, right on top. To get the outer brush strokes, I took an airbrush, kind of came away and did kind of like a soft hazing around that eye perimeter between the brow and the cheekbones. And yeah, it kind of made it appear like it was glowing. I think it's fairly effective, even in person, like from a distance. I think it looks pretty damn cool. Perhaps you can see it here, but there's like I said, there's gold accent. So what I tried to do is I tried to hit certain areas with gold to try to make it appear like there was a bronze quality to the piece, like there was a metal undercoating. It's pretty clear on the teeth and the mouth and things like that, some of the higher, sharper peaks. I could have done it much better with practice, but for a first attempt, I was pretty proud of it. But yeah, that's the that's the piece as a whole. Why don't I grab it and I can show you on camera what it looks like? Get out of the way. How do I angle? How? Yeah. This is really hard. Yeah, so that's him. That's Shendu. Looks pretty cool, right? He's a good size of my hand, roughly, a little bigger. I think it was like a 9-inch pie tin. The back, just an anchor hook. You can see here, this is that green putty that I had to use to fill in because as it sat on the pie tin, it was a little lopsided. So I had to fill it in because this edge was real thin. But yeah, you can see it's just white, it's porous. You can see some of the holes. It looks like, bubbly. That would have all been from the casting process, but here he is. Here's the boy. You can see the separation of the head. You can see some of the gold accents. So, yeah, that's Shendu. I hope you like it. I'm pretty excited about it. I think I did a good job, and I'm happy about that. I'm not afraid to say that. So, if you like this video, let me know. I'll obviously do different things on my channel. This is a totally different video, so I hope you enjoyed it. Definitely be curious to see what the feedback is, even just on the intro. But different things, like I said before, this channel won't just be drawing, and then maybe it won't just be art. It's going to be about creative process in general, whatever that means. So if you like it, let me know. Feel free to leave a like, feel free to leave a comment, feel free to subscribe. I'm on Twitch. No, I'm not. I'm on Twitter. Maybe I'll be on Twitch someday. I'm on Twitter. Feel free to follow me. There'll be behind the scenes pictures of some of my drawings and upcoming pieces. There'll be full pictures of finished pieces. Not this guy, but you never know. But other pieces in future videos, perhaps. But yeah, until next time. See you then. I'll show some of the casting process, again, first time for casting. And then we're painting, and then first time doing some of that painting. So there's a lot of firsts. Hope it turns out well. I'm happy with where the sculpt is. And yeah, we'll see where it goes from there. Thanks for watching.